On the day of his arranged wedding, Hayden's carefully controlled life begins to unravel when he comes face to face with the last person he ever expected to see again. Troy, the childhood bully who once haunted his past, now standing before him as the priest officiating his marriage. What begins as an uncomfortable reunion quickly stirs buried memories, unresolved emotions, and a tension neither of them can ignore. As the ceremony draws closer, Hayden is forced to confront not only the life chosen for him, but the feelings he never fully understood. Feelings that Troy, despite everything, has never forgotten. In a story of regret, redemption, and forbidden love, two men must decide whether to follow the paths laid out for them or risk everything to choose each other.
Chapter 1. The Invitation. The envelope arrived on a quiet afternoon, too quiet. Hayden was sitting alone in his apartment, half-finished coffee going cold on the table, when the doorbell rang. The sound echoed more loudly than it should have, cutting through the stillness like an announcement. He already knew what it was. He just didn't want to face it. Still, he stood up, dragging his feet across the floor. The moment he opened the door, the sight confirmed everything. A courier in a pressed uniform holding a cream-colored envelope with gold embossing. Formal, elegant, suffocating. "Delivery for Mr. Hayden Reed?" "Yeah," he muttered, taking it. The envelope felt heavier than it should have, as if it carried more than paper inside. Expectations, obligations, a future that had already been decided for him. He closed the door slowly. For a long moment, he just stared at it. Then, with a quiet exhale, he broke the seal. The words blurred at first. Marriage arrangement confirmed, alliance between families, ceremony date finalized. His fingers tightened around the paper. There it was. No surprise, no shock, just inevitability. "Of course," Hayden whispered, leaning back against the wall. His father had always been like this, calculating, strategic. Love was irrelevant. Marriage was a transaction. And Hayden? He was just a piece on the board. He skimmed the details, barely processing the name of the bride, the venue, the schedule, until one line stopped him cold. Officiant, Father Troy Sullivan. Everything in his body went still. The room felt smaller. No way. The name echoed in his mind, dragging memories up from places he had buried years ago. A boy standing too close. A voice whispering too near his ear, a smirk that always made his chest tighten, not entirely from fear. Troy, his childhood bully, the one person who made school feel like a battlefield, the one who cornered him for no reason, or maybe for reasons Hayden never understood. "You've got to be kidding me." He laughed, but it came out hollow.
Because deep down, something twisted in his chest. Not just fear, something more complicated, something unfinished. That night, Hayden couldn't sleep. He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, the invitation resting on his chest like a weight he couldn't push off. Father Troy Sullivan. The title didn't fit, not with the boy he remembered. That boy wasn't calm or holy. He was sharp, intense, too observant, too close. Hayden turned onto his side, squeezing his eyes shut. Why him? But no answer came, only memories, and the uneasy feeling that this wedding wasn't just a business arrangement anymore. It was a collision. Chapter 2. The Reunion. The church was larger than Hayden expected. Tall ceilings stretched upward, sunlight pouring through stained glass windows in colors that painted the floor like something sacred. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, his chest felt tight,
Every step he took inside echoed too loudly, as if announcing his presence to something or someone waiting. He told himself to stay calm. It was just a rehearsal, just a priest, just Hayden. The voice stopped him mid-step, low, familiar, unavoidable. Slowly Hayden turned, and there he was. Troy stood near the altar, dressed in black, posture straight, expression composed. The white collar at his neck made him look restrained, controlled, but nothing could hide those eyes, dark, sharp, locked onto him. For a moment neither of them spoke. The years between them felt like they collapsed instantly. Hayden felt it, the same strange tension from before, like being watched too closely. "Troy," he said finally. The name felt strange after so long. Troy took a step forward, measured, deliberate. "You came." "I didn't really have a choice." A faint smile tugged at Troy's lips. "You never liked being told what to do." Hayden let out a small breath. "You didn't either." Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with everything they hadn't said back then. Troy stopped a few steps away. Close enough. Too close. "You've changed," Troy said, his gaze scanning Hayden's face briefly before settling back on his eyes. "So have you." "Have I?" There was something in the way he said it, quiet, almost teasing, but not cruel, not like before. Hayden shifted slightly. "You're a priest now. That's a pretty big change." Troy tilted his head just slightly. "And you're getting married." The words landed heavier than expected. "Yeah." A pause. Then Troy stepped closer. One step. Two. Hayden's body instinctively stiffened. He hated that reaction. Hated that after all these years, Troy could still affect him like that. Troy noticed. Of course he did. "You still do that," he murmured. "Do what?" "Freeze." Hayden frowned. "I'm not." "You are." Troy's voice softened, but it only made things worse. Your shoulders tense. Your breathing changes. He was close now, close enough that Hayden could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Stop analyzing me. I used to do it all the time." "I know." That was the problem. Troy didn't back away, but he didn't move any closer either. Just enough distance to be safe, but not enough to feel comfortable. "I'm not here to make things difficult for you," said Troy quietly. Hayden let out a dry laugh. "You already are." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Something that made Hayden's heartbeat just a little too fast. Chapter 3. Old Scars. The past didn't come back all at once. It came in fragments, small moments that slipped into Hayden's thoughts when he least expected it. A locker slamming shut, footsteps behind him in an empty hallway, a voice, low and close. "Why do you always avoid me?" Back then, Hayden never had an answer. He just did. The truth was, Troy had never been like the other bullies. He didn't hit, didn't insult loudly, didn't humiliate him in front of crowds. Instead, he cornered him, waited until they were alone, then stepped into his space like he belonged there. "Relax," Troy would say, voice calm, but there was nothing relaxing about it, especially when he leaned in too close, close enough that Hayden could feel his breath, smell him, notice things he shouldn't notice. "You're weird," Hayden muttered under his breath now, pacing inside his apartment, because that was the only word he ever had for it. Weird, uncomfortable, confusing.
The next time he saw Troy, the church was empty, quiet. Sunlight filtered through the stained glass again, casting soft colors across the floor. Troy stood near the altar, flipping through something, maybe notes. He looked different when he wasn't watching Hayden, less intense, almost peaceful. Hayden hesitated, then walked forward. "We need to talk." Troy looked up immediately. About the past. That got his full attention. Troy closed the book in his hands and set it aside. "You bullied me." No hesitation this time, no avoidance, just the truth. Troy didn't deny it. "I know." "That's it? What else should I say?" "I don't know. An explanation?" Troy was quiet for a moment. Then he stepped down from the altar, slowly.
"Do you remember what it felt like?" Hayden asked, his voice tightening slightly despite himself. Troy stopped a few steps away. "Yes." "Then why?" The question hung between them, heavy. Troy's gaze softened, but it didn't look like pity. It looked like regret. "Because I didn't understand it." Hayden frowned. "Understand what?" Troy took another step closer, not enough to trap him, but enough to close the distance. "You." Hayden's breath caught. "What does that even mean?" "It means," Troy said quietly, "that I noticed you too much." The words sent a strange chill through him. "I didn't know what to do with it, so I turned it into something else." Something worse. Yes. Silence. Hayden's heart was beating faster now, not from fear, not entirely. "You could have just left me alone." "I tried." A small, humorless smile. "It didn't work." Hayden didn't know what to say to that, so he said the only thing he could. "You made me hate you." Troy held his gaze. "I know." A pause, then softer. "I hated myself for it too." That wasn't the answer Hayden expected, and somehow that made it worse, because it felt real. Hayden exhaled slowly. "You're different now." "I have to be." "Because you're a priest?" Troy's expressions shifted slightly. "Because I grew up." Their eyes met again, and this time there was no past version of them in the way, just two men standing too close, feeling too much, and not knowing what to do with it.
Chapter 4. Cracks in Control. The days leading up to the wedding blurred together in a suffocating rhythm. Meetings, calls, measurements, decisions. Hayden moved through them like a ghost. "Do you prefer ivory or pearl for the table linens?" "Does it matter?" The coordinator blinked. "Well, pick whatever looks expensive," Hayden muttered, rubbing his temple. Nothing felt real. Nothing mattered, except the church and him. Hayden told himself it was just coincidence, that their schedules overlapped, that it was unavoidable, but every time he stepped inside the church, Troy was already there, like he had been waiting. Not obvious, not intentional, just present, watching. That afternoon, the air inside the church felt warmer than usual. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass in rich gold and amber hues, making everything look softer, almost unreal. Hayden stood on a small stepladder adjusting a floral arrangement that someone insisted had to be perfectly centered. "Too much to the left," someone called from below. "I moved it already," Hayden sighed. "A little more." He reached again, stretching slightly. The ladder wobbled. "Wait." His foot slipped, the world tilted, and then a hand caught his waist, firm, unyielding. Another steadied the ladder. Careful. The voice was right behind him. Too close. Hayden froze. Troy. He hadn't even heard him approach. Hayden slowly stepped down, but Troy didn't let go immediately. His hand remained at Hayden's waist, warm, steady, possessive in a way that made Hayden's breath hitch. "You can let go now," Hayden said, trying to sound unaffected, but his voice came out quieter than intended. Troy didn't respond right away. Instead, his grip tightened slightly, just enough to make Hayden aware of it. "You always rush without looking." "I wasn't rushing." "You were distracted." That hit too close. "So what if I was?" Troy leaned in slightly. Hayden could feel the air behind him, feel the presence. "You used to do that too. Back then." Hayden swallowed. "Stop bringing that up." "Why?" "Because it doesn't matter anymore." Troy's hand finally loosened, but instead of stepping away, he remained close, just inches behind him. "Then why are you trembling?" Hayden's chest tightened. "I'm not." "You are." The words brushed against his ear, low and quiet. A shiver ran down his spine. Annoyed, Hayden turned abruptly and found himself face to face with Troy. Too close. Again. His back hit the edge of the ladder. Troy didn't move, didn't step back, just looked at him, studied him. "You're doing it again," muttered Hayden. "Doing what?" "Getting too close." A pause. Then, softly, "I haven't even touched you." The words lingered, because somehow that made it worse.
Chapter 5. The Truth He Couldn't Bury. Rain came without warning, heavy, relentless. By the time Hayden realized it, the sky had already darkened, and the sound of rain against the stained glass filled the church with a steady, rhythmic hush. Everyone else had already left. Only 2 people remained. Hayden stood near the front pews, arms crossed, staring at the rain outside. "Guess I'm stuck here." "You don't sound upset." Hayden didn't turn. "I prefer quiet." Troy's footsteps echoed softly as he approached, measured, unhurried. "You always did." Hayden let out a small breath. "So you remember too much." "I remember what matters." That made Hayden glance at him. Troy was closer now, but not enough to invade his space, just near, watching. Silence stretched between them. Comfortable? No, but not unbearable either. The rain filled the gaps, until Hayden spoke again. "This marriage is a mistake." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Troy didn't react immediately. "Then why go through with it?" "Because I don't have a choice." "You always say that." "Because it's true." Troy stepped closer, not enough to startle him, but enough to shift the atmosphere. "You're not a child anymore, Hayden." "Doesn't matter." "It does." Their eyes met. "You can walk away." Hayden laughed, quiet, bitter. "And ruin everything? Disappoint my family? Break a contract that's already been signed?" "Yes." The answer came too easily, too firmly. Hayden frowned. "You say that like it's nothing." "It isn't nothing." "Then why?" "Because losing you again would be worse." The words landed hard. Hayden went still. "What?" Troy didn't look away.
I didn't stop thinking about you. The air shifted, heavier, closer. That's not funny, Hayden said, though his voice lacked conviction. I'm not joking. You're a priest. I know. You're not supposed to. I know. Each response was calm, certain, unwavering. Then why are you saying this now? Troy's gaze softened, just slightly. Because I don't have the right to stay silent anymore. A pause. Then, because you're about to marry someone else. Hayden's chest tightened. I don't belong to you. I never said you did. Then what is this? Troy took one step closer, closing the distance. Regret. The word was quiet, but it carried weight. I regret what I did to you, Troy continued. I regret not understanding it sooner, and I regret that I might lose you without ever telling you the truth. Hayden's pulse quickened. And the truth is? Troy's voice dropped, low, steady. I wanted you. The words echoed in the quiet church, not loud, but impossible to ignore. Chapter 6. A Breath Away. The confession didn't end things. It made everything worse. Or better. Hayden couldn't tell anymore. He should have left. He should have walked out of the church, ignored everything, gone back to the life that had already been decided for him. But he didn't. Instead, he stayed. The rain softened outside, turning into a gentle, steady rhythm. Inside, the silence grew thicker, more intimate. Hayden stood still, heart beating faster than he wanted to admit. You don't get to say things like that and act like it changes nothing. I'm not acting like that. Then what are you expecting? Troy didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, slowly, carefully, giving Hayden time to step back. He didn't. I don't expect anything, Troy said quietly. I just didn't want to lie anymore. Hayden's breath felt uneven. You think this is fair? No. Then stop. I can't. That answer again. Simple, honest, dangerous. Troy lifted his hand, not suddenly, not forcefully, slowly, like before, as if asking without words. Hayden watched it happen, watched as Troy's fingers hovered near his face, then gently brushed against his cheek. Warm, soft, nothing like the rough, teasing touches from years ago. This was careful, intentional. Hayden's breath caught. You shouldn't. I know. Then don't. Troy's thumb moved slightly, tracing just beneath his cheekbone. A small movement, but it sent a quiet heat through Hayden's chest. You're not stopping me, Troy murmured. Hayden didn't respond. Because he wasn't. Their distance closed. Not all at once, but gradually, breath by breath, step by step, until they were standing impossibly close. Hayden could feel it, the warmth, the presence, the quiet tension pulling tighter between them. Troy's forehead rested lightly against his, a soft, grounding touch. Tell me to stop, Troy whispered. Hayden closed his eyes. He should. He really should. But instead, I can't. The words barely came out, and that was enough. Troy tilted his head slightly. Their noses brushed, a soft, accidental contact that sent a sharp pulse through Hayden's chest. Their breaths mingled. Close. Too close. Hayden.
His name sounded different like this. Not teasing, not distant. Something deeper. Troy leaned in, slowly, giving him time, giving him a chance. Hayden didn't move. Not forward, not back, just stayed, caught in the moment. Their lips hovered, a breath apart, a heartbeat, a choice. And then Hayden turned his head, breaking the moment. Barely, but enough. The contact never happened, but the tension didn't disappear. It lingered, sharp, unfinished. Troy didn't pull away immediately. Neither did Hayden. They stayed like that, foreheads still close, breaths still uneven. "This is wrong," Hayden whispered. Troy exhaled softly. "I know." "Then why does it feel like—" He stopped himself, but Troy finished it. "Like it isn't?" Silence. Hayden pulled back first this time, just enough to create space, but not enough to escape. "I'm getting married." Troy nodded. "I know." "Then this, whatever this is, it has to stop." Another pause. Then Troy said quietly, "Then stop me." Hayden didn't.
Chapter 7. The Decision. The morning of the wedding arrived too quickly. Hayden barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt it again. That almost moment, that closeness, Troy's breath, Troy's voice. Then stop me. But he hadn't, and that was the problem. The room was filled with quiet movement, stylists adjusting his suit, assistants organizing details, voices murmuring about timing and schedules. Everything was perfectly planned, except him. "Sir, please look up." Hayden blinked, realizing someone was fixing his tie. Right. He looked at himself in the mirror. Sharp suit, clean lines, perfect image. He looked like someone ready to get married. He didn't feel like it. When the room finally emptied, silence rushed in. Heavy, pressing. Hayden loosened his tie slightly, exhaling. "What am I doing?" A knock interrupted him. 3 soft taps. His chest tightened. "Come in." The door opened slowly. And, of course, it was him. Troy stepped inside, already dressed in his priestly attire, black suit, white collar, composed expression. But the moment their eyes met, something shifted. Neither of them spoke at first. The air felt different, thicker, charged. "You shouldn't be here," Hayden said quietly. "I needed to see you." "Before you marry someone else?" "Yes." The honesty was exhausting. Troy stepped closer, not as cautiously as before, not hesitant, just certain. "You still have time." Hayden let out a breath. "You keep saying that like it's easy." "It isn't." "Then stop making it sound like it is." Troy stopped in front of him, close but not overwhelming. "I'm not saying it's easy," he said softly. "I'm saying it's possible." Hayden looked away. You don't understand." "Then help me understand." A pause. Then Hayden spoke, quieter now. "My whole life has been decided for me, every step, every choice." He swallowed. "This wedding is just another one." Troy listened, really listened. Then choose something for yourself." Hayden let out a bitter laugh. "And ruin everything?"
or save yourself? Their eyes met again. And if I regret it? Hayden asked. Troy didn't hesitate. Then regret it with me. The words landed deep, too deep. Troy reached out, slowly. This time he didn't ask. He took Hayden's hand, warm fingers wrapping around his, firm, steady. Hayden's breath caught. You're shaking, Troy murmured. I'm not. You are. Their hands tightened. I don't know what to do, Hayden admitted, barely above a whisper. Troy stepped closer, close enough that their shoulders brushed. Then don't think about everything else, he said softly. Just think about what you feel when you're with me. Hayden's chest tightened again, because he knew the answer, and that was the scariest part.
Chapter 8. The Ceremony. The church was full. Voices, movement, anticipation. Everything was exactly as planned, perfect, beautiful. Wrong. Hayden stood at the altar. His heart felt too loud in his chest. Across from him stood his bride, graceful, elegant, everything his family could have asked for. Beside them, Troy, calm, collected, unreadable. But Hayden could feel it, that invisible thread between them, tight, unbreakable. The ceremony began. Words flowed, formal, polished, meaningless. Hayden barely heard them. All he could hear was his own heartbeat. All he could feel was Troy's presence beside him. Until do you take? Wait. The word cut through everything. Sharp, clear, final. Gasps filled the church. Hayden's hands trembled slightly at his sides. He hadn't planned to speak, but now that he had, he couldn't stop. I'm sorry, he said, his voice steady despite everything. I can't do this. Silence fell, heavy, stunned. His bride stared at him, shocked but composed. I won't pretend this is what I want, because it isn't. Murmurs spread through the guests, but Hayden didn't look at them. He turned, slowly, toward Troy. Their eyes met, and everything else disappeared. No crowd, no expectations, just them, just this moment. Troy didn't look surprised. He looked certain, like he had been waiting. Hayden took a step, then another, closing the distance. I'm sorry, he said, again, but this time it wasn't to the crowd. It was to himself. For all the times he didn't choose, didn't speak, didn't act. Until now. Troy stepped forward too, breaking the role he had been standing in. No longer just the priest, just a man standing in front of him. No one stopped them. Maybe they were too shocked. Maybe they didn't understand. Maybe it didn't matter. They stood face to face, closer than ever before, and this time there was no hesitation. Hayden reached first, grabbing the front of Troy's suit slightly, pulling him in. Their lips met, soft at first, careful, like testing something fragile, then steadier, real, a quiet confirmation of everything they hadn't said. Gasps echoed behind them, but neither of them pulled away. Not this time. Chapter 9. After the Fall. Chaos followed. Of course it did. Raised voices, accusations, disappointment. Everything Hayden expected, and more.
But for the first time, it didn't control him. They stood outside the church, away from the noise. The air felt clearer, lighter, even if everything else was falling apart. "You just destroyed your family's plans," Hayden said, running a hand through his hair. Troy stood beside him, calm as ever. "You destroyed them. You helped." A faint smile. "I didn't stop you." Hayden huffed softly. Unbelievable. But there was no real anger in it, just exhaustion and something else. Relief. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was quiet, peaceful. Troy turned slightly towards him. "Do you regret it?" The question lingered. Hayden thought about it, about everything, the consequences, the uncertainty, the future he just threw away. Then he stepped closer, closing the space between them. "Ask me again later," he said softly. Troy raised an eyebrow slightly. "Later?" "When things get harder." A pause. Then Hayden added, "But right now?" He reached out, fingers brushing lightly against Troy's sleeve, grounding himself. "No." Troy's expression softened in a way Hayden had never seen before, not guarded, not restrained, just open. "Then I'll take that answer," Troy said quietly. Hayden looked at him, really looked this time. No past, no fear, just the man in front of him. "Don't make me regret this," Hayden murmured. Troy stepped closer, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I won't." Chapter 10. A different beginning. Life didn't settle overnight. It couldn't. Too many things had changed. Too many bridges had been burned. The backlash was real. Family pressure, public scrutiny, endless questions. Hayden faced all of it, but this time he didn't face it alone. Troy stepped down from the priesthood. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't immediate, but it was certain. A quiet decision, just like everything else between them. Weeks passed, then months. Slowly things began to shift, not back to what they were, but forward into something new. One evening they found themselves standing on a quiet balcony. The city stretched below them, lights glowing softly against the darkening sky. The air was cool, calm, peaceful. Hayden leaned slightly against the railing, exhaling. Everything's still messy. Troy stood beside him. Life usually is. That's not comforting. It's honest. Hayden huffed a small laugh. You've changed. So have you. A familiar exchange, but this time it felt different, lighter. Silence settled. Comfortable now. You still scare me sometimes, Hayden admitted. Troy glanced at him. Good. Hayden rolled his eyes. Not like that. A pause. Then, softer. Not in a bad way. Troy stepped closer. Not overwhelming, not invading, just near. Their shoulders brushed, then stayed. Hayden leaned his head lightly against Troy's. No hesitation this time. No fear. Just warmth. Troy tilted his head slightly, resting it gently against Hayden's hair. A quiet, natural response. Their hands found each other, fingers intertwining without thought, without question. We're really doing this, Hayden murmured. Yes. No plan, no guarantees? Yes. Just us? Troy's grip tightened slightly. Just us. Hayden closed his eyes briefly, feeling it. The calm,
the certainty, the choice he finally made for himself. And for the first time, the future didn't feel like something decided for him. It felt like something he could step into, freely. And somehow, the boy who once cornered him in quiet hallways became the man who stood beside him, not trapping him, not pushing him, but staying, choosing him every time.